Hello everyone. Welcome to Frightening Tales. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. So, before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. And, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, now let's get comfortable, relax, and dive into tonight's case. Story 1. On July 7, 2021, Chandler Halderson calmly walked into the police station and reported both of his parents missing. He even went on the news cooperating with officers like any worried son would. Did you literally see them pulling out of the driveway heading out? No. Their son, Chandler Halderson, who asked to be off camera. But behind that soft voice was a web of lies so deep even seasoned detectives struggled to keep up. And as they peeled back each layer, they discovered this wasn't the first time Chandler had lied. So I kind of just left it at that. They say they're alive. What happened? You know what happened. You were there when it happened. We're not piecing this. Okay. I was there when it happened. He told deputies his parents, Bart and Krista Halderson, had vanished after heading to the family cabin in White Lake, nearly 160 miles north of their home in Windsor, Wisconsin. Chandler claimed they left on Friday, July 2, to fix storm damage with some family friends. Friends he conveniently couldn't name, didn't contact, and apparently didn't think to ask about. Chandler said his parents were supposed to be back by Sunday or maybe Monday. But by Wednesday, after days of silence and their phones going straight to voicemail, he finally decided to get the police involved. Deputies Joshua Seeley and John Nelson drove up to the family's cabin in White Lake, expecting to find signs that Bart and Krista had at least made it there. Instead, what they found raised serious red flags. The cabin was still covered in dust with no signs of recent activity. No bags, no dishes, no sign of life. Just an empty place that looked like it hadn't been touched in weeks. That's when things really started to shift. If the Haldersons never made it to the cabin, where did they go? They were well liked, had no known enemies, and absolutely no reason to vanish without warning. Suddenly, this wasn't just a missing persons case. It was the start of something much darker. And nobody saw it coming. My wife was pretty shook up, too. I mean, they're a very nice couple, very nice family. As you can see, the Haldersons appeared to be your typical all-American family. Quietly living in Windsor, Wisconsin, about 30 minutes north of Madison. Bart and Krista Halderson had been married since July 30, 1994. Bart worked as a certified public accountant for Bo USA, while Krista was an administrative assistant at Zimbrech Automotive. Together they raised two sons, 24-year-old Mitchell and 23-year-old Chandler. Mitchell, the older of the two, had already graduated from the University of Wisconsin, was working in software development. He lived on his own and was newly engaged. Chandler, on the other hand, still lived at home and on paper, seemed to have a promising future. He was close to finishing a certificate in renewable resource engineering at Madison College and claimed to be working in IT for American Family Insurance. He also said he had just landed a job at SpaceX and was planning to move to Florida with his girlfriend Catherine Katmelander once he graduated. From the outside, Everything seemed normal. Mitchell and Chandler were typical brothers who had grown even closer during the lockdowns, often spending their free time gaming online. But both had experienced health scares in the months leading up to July. Mitchell had been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes during a routine checkup and was briefly hospitalized. Chandler had recently suffered a fall down the stairs at home, hitting both the front and back of his head. He later claimed he had a concussion, vision problems, and nerve issues that made walking difficult. Then came the day their parents disappeared. Chandler was the one who informed Mitchell that Bart and Krista had supposedly gone to the family's cabin up north for the weekend. But this was news to Mitchell. He found it strange, especially since their mother, who he described as a bit of a helicopter parent, always told him whenever she and Bart planned a trip. This time, she said nothing. That silence immediately raised red flags. When Mitchell asked Chandler for more details, his brother said their parents left early Friday morning with some friends. Friends whose names he didn't know and in a vehicle he couldn't describe. That didn't sit well with Mitchell either. Their parents typically drove themselves, and it was out of character for Krista to be so vague or last minute about travel plans. On the morning of July 7th, Chandler went to the sheriff's precinct in Windsor and officially reported Bart and Krista missing. He told deputies they were supposed to return Sunday night or Monday morning, but later said he had received a text from his mother on Sunday, saying they'd be back either late Monday or early Tuesday. Deputies visited the Halderson home and tried calling the couple's phones, but every attempt went straight to voicemail. By that evening, the case was escalated and detectives Brian Shunk and Sabrina Sims were brought in to investigate. Authorities are still searching for a Windsor couple who have not been seen in days. 50-year-old Bart Halderson and his wife, 53-year-old Krista, were supposed to travel north last week and return home on Tuesday, but their son tells Tony Galley his parents' whereabouts are unknown. During a more in-depth interview, Chandler repeated his story with a few more details. He said he had helped his parents pack on Thursday, loading tools and supplies for the weekend. He claimed that when he woke up at 6:15 on Friday morning, they were already gone. Both of their vehicles, however, were still in the garage. He hadn't spoken to either of them since, but said he'd texted his mom several times. Most of the messages had gone through using iMessage, but a particular text sent at 4:47 p.m. on Saturday had sent as a regular SMS message, the kind that shows up when a phone is turned off or disconnected from the internet. The message read, "Hoping this goes through. I bet there's a lot of people up there making it hard to message." It was a convenient explanation, blaming poor cell reception due to 4th of July crowds, and one that seemed designed to keep suspicion at bay. The next day, Chandler said he received a reply from Krista. The message, which arrived on Sunday at 11:04 a.m., read, "Made it safely. Can't get anything through, and yes, it's packed. Going to White Lake today for the parade and will be home Monday night, Tuesday early. Love you lots." At first glance, it looked perfectly normal. But investigators began to notice things that didn't quite add up. For one, Krista never informed her employer that she'd be taking any time off. Not for Monday, not even for Friday. Her co-worker and friend, Daniel Kroninger, said it was completely out of character for her to miss work without a heads up, especially without so much as a phone call. Daniel, being close to the family, had actually invited Chandler over to his house that Sunday night to watch fireworks. During their visit, Chandler casually mentioned that he had spoken with his parents and that they were planning to return on Monday. At first glance, Chandler's behavior didn't raise immediate alarms. But looking back, many things just didn't add up. When Krista failed to show up for work on Monday, Tuesday, and even Wednesday, without so much as a call, it wasn't Chandler who grew concerned. It was her close friend and co-worker, Daniel. In fact, Daniel was the one who pushed Chandler to report his parents missing. It wasn't an act of urgency from a worried son. It was hesitation that needed a nudge. Even more unsettling, after Chandler had already arrived at the sheriff's precinct to file the report, he sent a text to his mother over an hour and a half later. The message read, "Hey, I'm worried. At the police station. Can you text or call?" It was sent as a standard SMS, not an iMessage, which meant Krista's phone was likely off. As detectives began digging, Chandler gave them a tour of the house. In the lower level, they noticed a makeshift fort made of couches pushed together, which Chandler said he'd been using as a bed. He explained that due to his recent head injury, he had trouble getting around in the dark. And since the upstairs bathroom near his room wasn't working, sleeping downstairs made it easier to reach the functioning bathroom at night. In the same room was a fireplace with a missing pane of glass. Chandler claimed it broke when he was playing fetch indoors with one of the family dogs. He cut his foot on the glass and left blood on the floor, a detail that raised eyebrows, especially when detectives saw how much effort had gone into cleaning that particular area. Nearby, they noticed a handwritten note from Krista that read, "Good morning, Chandler. Hope your day goes really well, Pam, just in case." It included a neighbor's phone number. Chandler said Krista had left it for him before heading to the cabin in case he experienced issues related to his head injury. But when detectives followed up with Pam, she gave them a different story. She did recall Krista asking if she'd be home the previous Wednesday since Bart had a dentist appointment and someone needed to be close by for Chandler, but she said Krista never mentioned leaving a note for that weekend. To investigators, it started to look like Chandler may have recycled an old note and planted it, hoping it would sell his story. Meanwhile, Mitchell and his fiancée took matters into their own hands. They drove to the family cabin in White Lake to look around. Mitchell had been texting and calling their parents, but received no reply. Deputies from Langlade County met them there and searched the property. It was immediately obvious that no one had been there recently. The grass was overgrown. The cabin was locked and undisturbed, and there were no signs that anyone had been inside in weeks. They checked the shed and boathouse, too. Nothing. No bags, no food, no footprints. The place was still as a ghost town. Even more suspicious, while there, they found a flyer advertising the White Lake Parade. It was scheduled for Saturday, July 3rd, at 2 p.m., not Sunday, as Krista's supposed text had claimed. Back in Windsor, Chandler was going door to door in his neighborhood, asking if anyone had seen or heard anything about his parents. One neighbor's doorbell camera caught Chandler asking if their security system had picked up any activity early Friday morning. He specifically asked if it recorded anything before 6:15 a.m. The neighbor agreed to check and later shared the footage with authorities. What the video showed was damning. No one left the house that morning. Bart and Crystal weren't picked up. They didn't drive away. They never left. By Friday evening, July 8th, Chandler was called back to the station for a formal interview with Detective Shunk. This time, his behavior was noticeably off. Left alone in the room, he walked over to the wall and pressed his ear against it as if trying to listen in on a conversation happening outside. He looked uneasy, maybe even paranoid. It wasn't clear if he realized he was being recorded. But as soon as the detective entered, Chandler tried fishing for information. He asked if officers were at his house. He said a detective had mentioned that something happened. He wanted to know if there was a warrant. He was visibly trying to figure out how much investigators knew, but Detective Shunk gave him nothing. When the interview began, Chandler was asked to walk through his timeline again. He mentioned that Wednesday, June 30th, was when the glass on the fireplace broke. He cut his foot and said his girlfriend, Kat, thought the wound might be infected. Chandler claimed his father was furious about the broken glass and sent him to his room, a detail that struck the detective as strange. Chandler was 23 years old. Being sent to his room at that age raised questions about the household dynamic. As Chandler continued, his words gave away more than he probably realized. He casually described the following days as if his parents had simply gone away and left him in charge. He admitted to not really doing much while they were gone. Should have been cleaning, he said. He mentioned that the house looked pretty clean when the police arrived except for dog hair. But detectives noted that everything in the basement, shelves, boxes, bins, was immaculately organized and labeled. It didn't match Chandler's laid-back personality. Something about it felt forced. No, I'm just wondering if okay. As far as I know, they were at your house and they were going to be there talking to you to ask if you would come up here and talk to us. Yeah, but Officer Haley just walked pretty much into the gate. You know the gate on the outside? She just kind of walked in. I was wondering if was that when you were getting your wallet? No, we were out. I was in the car waiting to leave. I was just wondering if everything's okay because she said something's happened and we need to go down. I'll find out what that's about. Has anything bad happened? Not sure. The more you observed, the clearer it became that Chandler may have been under pressure, not just from the investigation, but from within his own home. Friends and family later described the Haldersons as meticulous, structured, and very involved in their sons' lives. That structure may have started to feel suffocating to someone like Chandler, especially if he was already hiding things. And soon, investigators would discover just how much he had been hiding. It was during a casual dinner on Thursday evening that Chandler claimed his parents told him about their weekend plans. Over plates of what he described as shrimpless scampi, a version of his dad's favorite dish made without shrimp. The conversation turned toward the cabin. According to Chandler, it was during this meal that Bart and Krista mentioned they would be heading up north with some friends. Chandler acted nonchalant about it, responding with a simple, "Oh, cool." He said his father ever the practical one, requested tools for pipe repair and gas cans for the trip. So Chandler retrieved the items. Plumbing supplies from a tote in the garage and a couple of red jerry cans, and helped move their already packed duffel bags to the mudroom near the garage. After gathering supplies, Chandler said the three of them watched a movie together before Bart and Krista headed off to bed. Chandler stayed up late playing video games, then eventually made his way downstairs to sleep on the makeshift couch fort he had built. He claimed he woke up around 6:15 a.m. Friday morning to find a house empty. His parents, he said, had already left. He fed the dogs, saw a note from his mother with insurance cards, supposedly left for his upcoming doctor's appointment, and then went about his day. But by that point, investigators had already confirmed that no one left the house that morning. That security footage from the neighbor's camera confirmed that no vehicles were pulled into the driveway. By now, detectives were starting to see through the cracks in his story. While Chandler told investigators he spent the 4th of July weekend relaxing, playing games, and spending time with his girlfriend Kat, detectives were interviewing Kat separately. She believed Chandler was innocent and happily recounted their weekend, thinking she was helping clear them both from suspicion. As a fan of true crime, Kat even joked about how the people closest to the victim are usually the first to be looked at, unaware that detectives were already comparing her statements to Chandler's. While most of their timelines matched, there were a few key discrepancies that couldn't be ignored. Mr. and Mrs. Halderson, like he had SpaceX. Like, why would he jeopardize something he would dream of, you know? Like, they're his parents. For Christmas, they got him and his brother matching tool sets. Like, come on. He cooks dinner for them. They have root beer floats together. They play Mario Kart whenever his parents want to. And his brother Mitchell. Mitchell. Yeah. He's a leaf in the wind. One of those inconsistencies involved a visit to a farm owned by Crest, Kat's mother's girlfriend. On Sunday, July 4th, Kat and Chandler visited the farm for dinner. But Chandler claimed he went back the following day on his own to talk to Crest and Dulce, Kat's mom, about his health. He said he told them that his leg issues might be permanent and that he'd likely lose his opportunity to work at SpaceX because he wouldn't be able to travel. After breaking down emotionally, he claimed they let him use the pool to relax. According to Chandler, he simply went for a walk in the woods and came back itchy. A result of the grass or bugs, he said before washing off in the pool. But when investigators spoke with Crest, she recalled things differently. She remembered Chandler asking if he could use the pool the day before, which she allowed. But on Monday, when he returned alone, he disappeared for a period of time after backing his father's blue Subaru out back into the woods. She said the trunk was open and Chandler was nowhere to be found. Eventually, he emerged from the wooded area and casually walked to the pool. The timing, his behavior, and the odd disappearance didn't sit right with her. Detectives took her suspicions seriously. As Chandler sat in an interview room at the station, recounting his weekend in disjointed pieces, officers were already on the farm executing a search. It didn't take long before they spotted vultures circling overhead, always a grim sign. As one deputy moved toward the wooded area where Chandler had been seen, he noticed a suspicious pile of branches. Beneath them, he found something horrifying. A human torso. The body had no head, no arms, and no legs. It was clothed only in gray cargo shorts with a black belt, and a rope was tied around the waist. 2 bullet wounds were visible on the torso. Nearby, a garbage can held a bloodied tarp and a Target shopping bag filled with bloody rags. That bag had a shipping label with Kat's name on it. Close to where Chandler's car had been parked, officers also found a rusted metal drum. Inside were saw blades and a pair of scissors. Though the remains had yet to be officially identified, investigators strongly suspected the torso belonged to Bart Halderson. Simultaneously, back at the Halderson home, police were uncovering more chilling evidence. Blood was discovered on the basement floor. Inside the fireplace, the same one with the shattered glass, they found bone fragments, a bullet fragment, and a spent shell casing. In the garage, hidden under a shelf and stuffed inside a shoe, they discovered Bart and Krista's driver's licenses and cell phones, wrapped in tin foil and paper towels. Detective Shunk was still sitting across from Chandler in the interview room when the notification came in. They had found human remains. Keeping a calm exterior, he leaned in and asked a chilling but necessary question. "So, we have like 20 pages of writing. I'm going to start with a clean white piece of paper for you to start telling the truth." "Okay." "Why?" "Because. Listen to me. This is the only chance you're going to have to tell us the truth." "Okay." "Okay." "What?" "We listen. Listen. I can't tell you what we know, but we know you're not telling us the truth. We know your parents are no longer with us." "Okay. And we know the reason why." "Okay, you need to tell the truth. There's listen. You need to tell the truth about what happened and just tell us why it happened." "Okay. If something happened, if you were defending yourself or if you just got fed up with stuff, you need to tell us the truth." "Okay, this is your chance to tell us why." "Okay, I'm not beasing you." "Okay, so can we do that?" "Okay. Okay, I'm lawyer." "I'm sorry." "Say that again." "Lawyer. Because there you want to learn." "Yeah." "Okay. Okay." It was 6:41 p.m. Chandler Halderson was officially under arrest. Not because he made a mistake once, but because nearly every part of his story was built on lies that were crumbling fast. His plan, if you could call it that, was unraveling at every corner. He didn't act confused. He didn't look shocked. He wasn't concerned about his parents. He was annoyed that the detectives weren't buying his story. His eyes weren't full of fear or grief. They were calculating. To many observers, Chandler's plan seemed painfully naive. He thought if he reported his parents missing, authorities would just log it, shrug, and move on. That no one would search, no one would ask questions, and the murder would simply fade. But what he didn't count on was that Bart and Krista Halderson were beloved, respected, known. And when people like that disappear, the world notices. The torso found on the farm was confirmed to be Bart's, but Krista was still missing. That's when investigators turned to Kat, Chandler's girlfriend, who had been incredibly cooperative from the start. she allowed them to access her phone's location data. What she didn't know was that it would provide the missing link. Chandler had once cheated on Kat, so she used Snapchat's location tracking to keep tabs on him. On Saturday morning, July 3rd, she saw Chandler, labeled hubby in her app, 25 miles from home near the Wisconsin River. She took a screenshot to maybe ask why he was there. Using that information, investigators searched the area, and it was there they found Krista's legs dismembered and cut into sections. DNA confirmed they were hers. Blood found on tools at the farm matched both Bart and Krista. The evidence was mounting, and Chandler was running out of places to hide. A Dane County man convicted of killing and dismembering his parents will spend the rest of his life in prison. Chandler Halderson was convicted of killing Bart and Krista Halderson back in January. Halderson had initially reported his parents missing last summer, but he was later arrested for lying to police about their whereabouts. Investigators eventually found the Haldersons' remains scattered around D.N.E. County. The trial had 8 days of witnesses and included testimonies from neighbors, family, friends, and Chandler's own brother. The Dane County judge says life in prison is the only way to protect people from Chandler Halderson. A jury convicted Halderson of killing and dismembering his parents. As we mentioned last summer, his life sentence also comes without the possibility of parole. Now, if you thought the murders were the darkest part of the story, brace yourself, because as investigators dug deeper, they uncovered something even more disturbing. Chandler Halderson's entire life was a lie. Not just one detail, not just a misunderstanding. Everything. He hadn't been attending college. He never worked at American Family Insurance. He hadn't landed a job at SpaceX. In fact, every claim he had made to his parents, his girlfriend, and his friends was fabricated. Chandler had gone so far as to create fake email addresses, writing and replying to himself as if he were professors or HR managers, crafting long chains of false correspondence to keep up the illusion that he was a successful student and a promising professional. But eventually the cracks started to show, and Bart Halderson noticed. Tired of excuses and delays, Bart contacted Madison College directly. He asked for Chandler's transcripts and proof of a certificate in renewable energy. What he got back was devastating. Chandler wasn't enrolled. He wasn't earning any credential. In fact, he owed the school over $2,000. Bart wasn't just disappointed. He was done being lied to. He scheduled a meeting at the college for Thursday, July 1st, at 2:30 in the afternoon. At 2:10 p.m., Bart texted his son, "I'm ready whenever you are." Bart never made it to that meeting. Authorities believe Chandler shot his father in the basement that afternoon, before they could leave the house. Evidence later confirmed it. A bullet fragment and a spent shell casing were found in the fireplace. Blood on the floor matched Bart's DNA. Then, in a cold attempt to buy time, Chandler texted his mother asking her to pick up soda on the way home. And when Krista walked through that front door, she never had a chance. Chandler killed her, too. Her blood, like Bart's, was found in the basement. That same night, Chandler went a quick trip and bought 20 pounds of ice, not for drinks, but likely to preserve the bodies in a chest freezer in the basement. Blood would later be found in the freezer's drain. He dismembered both his parents using power tools and an axe, both later recovered, both covered in DNA. Surveillance footage showed Chandler the next morning at Fleet Farm, buying a tarp. That tarp was later found wrapped around Bart's torso, complete with Chandler's fingerprint. That day, Chandler texted his girlfriend, Kat, asking for hydrogen peroxide and more ice. He claimed their ice maker was broken and that his family just liked their drinks extra cold. As investigators traced Chandler's movements, they found even more horrifying evidence. He had driven to the Wisconsin River, a spot he'd visited the year before, and even posed for pictures at. It was there that he dumped Krista's dismembered legs. His phone data showed he made multiple stops near the river, but her remaining body parts were never recovered. On Monday, July 5th, Chandler told Kat he had a follow-up doctor's appointment. He even texted her play-by-play updates, pretending to check in, get x-rays, and undergo scans. But records showed he never left his house until 4:30 that afternoon, the same time he drove back to the farm and dumped Bart's torso. After filing the missing persons report, Chandler began Googling phrases like body found in Wisconsin and dismembered body found in Milwaukee River. The remains hadn't even been discovered yet. He was searching in advance. Then came the final blow. While cleaning her shed, Crest, Kat's mom's girlfriend, discovered a semi-automatic rifle tucked away behind some supplies. At first, she thought it belonged to her elderly father, but when she remembered Chandler's visit, she alerted police. The gun was traced back to Chandler. It was the murder weapon. The trial began in January of 2022. Chandler was charged with first-degree intentional homicide, hiding a corpse, lying to law enforcement, and mutilating a body. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence. The defense didn't even try to claim innocence. Instead, they argued that the killings weren't premeditated, that Chandler may have simply panicked, that maybe it was all a horrible accident. But Bart had been shot twice in the back. Krista had been chopped apart. Phones were hidden. Bodies burned. Lies stacked higher than the ceiling. On January 20th, the jury returned a unanimous verdict. Guilty on all counts. 2 months later, Chandler appeared in court for sentencing. For the first time, he spoke, but there was no apology, no emotion. Chandler Halderson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. No early release, no second chance, just silence. The same silence he tried to cover his crimes with. If he had told the truth from the beginning, things might have been different. But his need to protect his lie, his image, his fantasy cost 2 people their lives. Now the world sees Chandler for what he truly is. Not the college-bound prodigy, not the rising SpaceX recruit, but a manipulator, a liar, and a killer who will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Meanwhile, his older brother, Mitchell Halderson, has tried to move forward with his life, though the trauma is something he'll likely carry forever. Mitchell was the one who drove to the family cabin and searched for their parents himself, not yet knowing the horrific truth. He testified at Chandler's trial and made it clear how out of character it was for their mother to go anywhere without telling him. Today, Mitchell continues to work in software development and lives privately, away from the public eye. He and his fiancée have kept a low profile since the trial. And while they've stayed out of the media, their strength during the proceedings was deeply felt in court. Krista's co-workers and close friends also struggled to make sense of the tragedy. One in particular, Daniel, who had been close with the family and worked with Krista, played a key role early on by urging Chandler to report his parents missing. Many of Krista's colleagues described her as a warm, dedicated, and deeply involved mother. Her sudden disappearance and the horrifying truth that followed shook their community to its core. As for Kat, Chandler's ex-girlfriend, she cooperated fully with investigators and provided key location data from her Snapchat that led to the discovery of Krista's remains. She had believed Chandler was innocent at first and only wanted to clear both of them from suspicion. She since moved on with her life and stayed out of the public spotlight. The people left behind, family, friends, and the community, are still healing from what happened. The betrayal, the shock, and the unimaginable loss of two loving parents at the hands of their own son left scars that time may never fully erase. But through it all, they've held onto the memories of Bart and Krista, choosing to honor their lives even after everything they endured. Story 2. Summer 2012. Longland County-based city, Gwangi Province. A small truck snakes through treacherous mountain roads. The path twists rugged and slick with mud from recent rains. A long-haired man in glasses dress simply rides alongside volunteers navigating the perilous terrain. For them, these grueling trips are routine, repeated every so often. This time they carry a university admission letter and a scholarship worth 10,000 Chinese yuan. Roughly $1,400 to deliver directly to a village girl. She's one of many impoverished children this man has vowed to help. His name Wang Ji, helping the disabled, supporting students, a double blessing, a legacy of virtue. This slogan blazes across the homepage of the Bay Student Support website with a mission to keep one child in school, build a brighter future. Wang Ji launched this charity platform in 2006. Countless families felt blessed to cross paths with him, believing he could secure a radiant future for their children. But who could have guessed behind the saintly facade lurked a vile predator, nothing less. Now, let's uncover today's chilling tale. Wang Ji was born in 1980 in Longland County, Bay City, Gwangi Province. Raised in poverty, his mother battled severe illness. Only through donations from teachers and friends could he afford to attend the Bay's Ethnic Teachers College, now merged into Bay's University. In 1999, after graduating, Wang Ji taught at elementary schools scattered across Longland County. These schools perched precariously on mountainsides, often just a few ramshackle classrooms built from baked earth and old tiles. Shattered windows let icy winds howl through. Students and volunteer teachers with no dormitories crammed into makeshift rooms. No cafeteria existed each week. Students teaked hours over mountains hauling firewood and food from home to cook in a crude kitchen, barely scraping by. Witnessing countless students drop out due to hardship, Wang Ji hatched an idea, a fund to support education shared with fellow teachers. But back then it was just a dream on paper. In 2006, he applied for an adult university entrance exam and was accepted into an art academy. Yet tuition fees exceeding 10,000 yuan about $1,400 per year, stopped him cold. He shelled the admission letter. In that crushing moment, Wang Ji realized he too was a victim of lost education. That's when he swore to turn his idea into reality. From a tiny rented room, he leased a server and spent a grueling month building the base student support website. Through 10-cent Q and email, he tirelessly spread the word online. At first, skepticism reigned. But over time, kind-hearted donors responded. Even media outlets took notice. Seizing the momentum, Wang Ji teamed up with reporters and volunteers traveling to remote villages in towns like Da and Zhu Chong in Long County. They filmed extensive footage, uploading it to the website, sparking widespread attention across society. The base student support website operated in two ways. Students or teachers could submit aid applications, or Wang Ji and local volunteers would visit remote elementary schools to assess needs firsthand. Either way, he posted student profiles and details online, awaiting donors to step forward. Beyond this, individuals across society rallied support in countless ways. Students use spare time to crowdfund online, collecting school supplies and essentials for kids. Working professionals took holidays to travel hundreds of miles delivering materials and gifts to students in person. A young woman from Guangxi, working at a Hong Kong firm, stumbled upon the charity work in her hometown. She abandoned her high-paying job, dipped into her own savings, and returned to Longland to volunteer as a teacher. In just 6 months, she raised over 100,000 yuan, roughly $14,000, to support local elementary schools. Her efforts kept many students in village classrooms. Some escaped the mountains, passing exams for high schools, vocational colleges, even universities. Wang Ji too returned to the school where he once taught. There he established a special class for girls who dropped out. He gathered their information, snapped photos, and posted them on the website to attract aid. His ultimate dream: to found a base student support fund and launch at least 12 girls' classes across Bay City, one in every county. In 2012, in Taiyin, Shandong Province, a man in his 30s, using the alias Chaosu, planned to fund charity projects with his former military comrades. While searching online, he repeatedly stumbled across links to the BA student support website. Curious, he clicked. After 6 years, Wang Ji's website ranked among the top small-scale charities. Its polished professional setup, transparent records of donors, recipients, funds raised, and their use earned praise. To Cho Su, a fellow philanthropist, Wang Ji's noble actions and organizational skill were all inspiring. Sponsoring a local student for a year cost just 200 yuan, about $28. Even with living expenses, it was 500 to 600 yuan, as some Chio Suod and his friends could easily cover. From 2012, he began sending donations to the base student support website in small batches. His contributions eventually reached tens of thousands of yuan. Everything seemed smooth until one detail gnawed at him: the donation account. It was Wang Ji's personal account at the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, ICBC. When questioned, Wang Ji explained. In a media interview, a lack of staff and funds prevented the group from registering officially with civil authorities, so no public account existed. The website ran on 2 volunteers paid a modest 101,000 yuan monthly. Operating costs around 20,000 yuan yearly came from donors. Though it was a personal account, Wang Ji vowed, "Every cent I receive goes to the kids' education and living needs." But soon, Cho Su sensed something sinister. By late 2013, as a donor, he checked on the students he supported. Shockingly, the aid wasn't fully delivered. A promised 5,000 yuan grant, about $700, reached students as only $3,000 to 4,000 yuan. The rest labeled as hardship fees or website operating costs for Wang Jie. It wasn't just one case. Rumors swirled. 10 to 20% of donations were siphoned off as management fees. This contradicted Wang Jie's solemn promise. "What I receive, the students get." Determined to dig deeper, Cha Su's blood ran cold when a sponsored girl whispered, "He makes us go to his dorm to get the money, but we're too scared to go." In May 2014, Cho Su traveled to Longland County, Guangxi, visiting elementary schools in the mentioned villages. After speaking with 70-80 students, he confirmed the girl's story. Even small grants of 300 to 500 yuan faced 10 to 20% cuts. Some students received nothing at all. Isolated in remote areas, young and without communication tools, the children's plight went unnoticed. Older students faced a cruel bind. Desperate for funds to study, yet terrified by Wang Jie's threats, they stayed silent. According to Wang Ji's own records, over 9 years, he collected 7.227 million yuan. About $1.02 million US to aid over 4,000 poor students. But how much reached them? How much lined Wang Jie's pockets? Only he knew. Cha Su went undercover, creating multiple online accounts and joining 4 or 5 Tencent Q groups where Wang Jie was active. Posing as different personas, he investigated. First, he approached a Guangdong businessman named Jiang close to Wang Jie to probe donation details. During one chat, Chang's words froze. Cha Sua. Doing charity in Longland's great low education levels, decent living conditions, and some schoolgirls for fun. That chilling remark confirmed Cha Sua's worst fears. Posing as Yuan Hong, a Jiangyi entrepreneur introduced by Jiang from Guangdong, Xiao gained Wang Ji's trust. For 4 months, they discussed investments. Wang Ji repeatedly urged him to visit Longlin. When Xiao Sua hesitated, Wang Ji offered a special perk access to school girls. To prove it, he sent over 10 videos he'd filmed himself. The girls barely over 10 years old. When Cha Sua still didn't visit or donate, Wang Ji grew suspicious. His tone turned menacing. "Don't come too long. You might not make it back." Undeterred, Cha Sua tracked down 2 victims, a girl named Maid Zi and her close friend, Akai. Their accounts laid bare Wang Jie's true nature. As a father of an 8-year-old daughter, Cha Sua couldn't stomach the horror. He vowed to expose the truth behind the Bay Student Support Network. Longland County, a distant speck on the horizon, where Maid Zi and Akai often gazed from the mountains. Too far to see clearly until the summer they turned 12. Wang Ji arrived, his smile, a mask of deceit. Climbing up from the foothills, he promised to take Maid Z and Akai to the county seat where scholarship money awaited. That day should have been their happiest. Instead, it marked the start of a relentless nightmare. Days later, back at school, their phones buzzed with Wang Ji's calls. Armed with compromising videos, he blackmailed them, demanding they meet him at a hotel again. Terrified, Maid Z and Akai went there. Wang Ji and his accomplice Yang Jia humiliated them once more. The ordeal uploaded to the website, weaponized to silence them. Weeks before her high school entrance exam, maids discovered she was pregnant. Yet, Wang Ji's harassment didn't stop: texts, video calls, relentless torment. Why so brazen? Maid Z, like most village kids, was a left-behind child abandoned to fate. Unable to endure, she dropped out before finishing middle school and fled alone to Guangdong to work. To her frail, unaware grandmother, she left only a whisper: "I don't want to study anymore." But Wang Ji, shameless, held her younger sister hostage. Desperate, Maid Z returned to Lin, enduring his abuse again. In Guangdong's factories, maids buried her trauma in silence. The shame, fear, and humiliation clung to her. At night, in fitful sleep, she relived that summer, waking with tears streaming down her face. Akai fared no better. After graduating middle school, she passed the entrance exam for a vocational school in the county. But Wang Ji's threats crushed her. She dropped out, fleeing to Nanning for work. Soon after diagnosed with moderate depression, she battled suicidal thoughts. A kind social worker noticed her struggle, guiding her to a counseling center for help. When Chas Sua found Maid Z, she was working at a small local spa, emotionally numb, seething with suppressed rage. His arrival was a faint glimmer in her darkened world. Encouraged by him, Maid Z resolved to gather evidence, reaching out to other girls Wang Ji had harmed. But except for Akai, almost no one would cooperate. Some were in college. Others worked far away, farm back home, or had started families. They wanted no part of Wang Ji's shadow, dreading the gossip and judgment that speaking out would bring. Most stayed silent. Only a few shared scraps of information. Each time Chojua met these victims, their wary, fearful eyes haunted him. The words he heard most: "I know what Wang Ji did. I admire you, but I can't come forward." From Taiyin, Shandong to Longlin Guang. See, a grueling 2,000 kilometers trek. Chas Sua lost count of his trips. Each lasted over 20 days, costing more than 30,000 yuan, about $4,200. His constant leaves nearly cost him his job. Yet, after a year of quiet work, he amassed 27,000 pieces of evidence. Videos, photos, chat logs. The time had come to expose the truth, but the next step harder than stepping into a tiger's den. Xiao Sua first called the Guangxi Provincial Public Security Department, only to be rebuffed. They said the case belonged to local authorities. Ian's police demanded he bring all evidence in person to file a report. Despite multiple trips, they refused to act. Turning to the media, he faced more rejections. Despair crept in. He nearly gave up. Then Guang Television called, eager to investigate and report. Hope reignited. Guang Television Network, dispatched reporters to Lin for a covert investigation. Posing as philanthropists, they contacted Wang Jie, expressing interest in visiting. On arrival, they uncovered flaws from the start. Wang Jie's vetting process for aid recipients was shockingly lax. He'd find a dilapidated house, summon nearby kids, snap a photo, and get a relative's phone number. No background checks, no forms. Digging deeper, reporters learned Wang Jie, the poor mountain teacher living on a village salary, had bought land near town to build a house and planned to invest in a duck farm, the money source no one had ever asked. Over drinks, Wang Jie got to the point. He offered special services from students if the reporters donated. To prove his capabilities, he showed videos on his phone, including one of May's. He even planned to train her to recruit more pretty girls, promising her a cut. The girls like Maisie, mostly the poorest. Desperate to study, often abandoned or orphaned with no one to protect them. Wang Jie's depravity didn't stop there. He forced girls into summer services, a vile scheme, sending them to other cities to entertain donors. Each girl was priced a commodity. For every introduction, Wang Jie pocketed a commission, refused no scholarship, or worse, their photos were used as bargaining chips to secure aid. Reporters uncovered more. Though unmarried, Wang Jie lived with his girlfriend surnamed Yang for 7 or 8 years, they had a 3-year-old daughter. Yet, as a father, he shamelessly showed reporters videos of his victims' girls from elementary to vocational schools. Exploited, they became his tools for profit and trophies of his cruelty. By late July 2013, with Maisie and a few other girls' help, Chiosua finalized his evidence. Guangxi television network's secret investigation neared its end. At 8 p.m. on August 13, their online news program aired an explosive expose. 3 hours later, at 11:40 p.m., police arrested Wang Jie. On September 10, his accomplice, Yang Jie, was apprehended after turning himself in. Official reports confirmed Yang Jie joined Wang Jie in abusing Ma Akai and Ma. By September 21, both were formally detained. The Bay Student Support website was shut down, its accounts frozen, and monitored. Justice came, but at a cost. As the school year began, countless students lost tuition aid due to the website's closure. Online, some voiced outrage at Chiosua's expose. Among them, students facing expulsion. Why not wait until after the semester started? They demanded. Are you just chasing fame? If you're so good, restart the scholarship website. The backlash stunned Chiosua. In an interview, he expressed regret for acting too hastily. A brief delay might have secured the students' fees. After all, thousands, not just a few, depended on that aid, but reality was brutal. Waiting could have trapped more girls in Wang Jie's hands or, worse, choosing between halting a predator and leaving students without funds was agonizing, for the desperate. Scholarships were lifelines, their harm obscured by poverty. Yet, Chiosua, as an adult, made the moral choice. In the aftermath, he fought back. Collaborating with authorities, Chiosua launched a charity project on Tencent QQ to protect Bass's poor students, raising over 200,000 yuan, about $28,000 US. Guangzhou City Service Center joined coordinating donations while the Guangzhou Youth Development Foundation managed and distributed the funds. The Education Department added the website students to their records. Through collective effort, the tuition crisis was resolved. October 13, 2016. The People's Court of Longland County, Bay City, Guangxi, delivered its verdict. Wang Jie, 15 years. For sexual assault, 1.5 years for fraud, 16 years total. Yang Jie, his accomplice, surrendered and confessed, earning a reduced sentence of 5 years. In court, Wang Jie protested the penalty as too harsh, but didn't confirm an appeal. By 2020, his good behavior in prison led to a reduced sentence with release projected for April 2031. To many, the punishment felt too light. Could Wang Jie truly have covered the sky with one hand in Longland? A caption on the BA Student Support website claimed he worked at the Longland Propaganda Department's publicity office. Reporters debunked this. He was only temporarily hired there in 2009. Victims revealed Yang Jie boasted of being a county official. The truth, he was just a driver. For the Longland People's Committee, the public demanded answers. Why did the authorities fail? First, the BA Student Support website, a personal project by Wang Jie, was unregistered with the Ministry of Civil Affairs and lacked a corporate account. China's charity donation laws restrict fundraising to registered non-profit organizations. Yet, for 9 years, this illegal operation went unchecked, exposing glaring oversight failures by local civil authorities. Second, Wang Jie's misconduct predated his charity. Locals reported his predatory behavior toward female teachers and students while teaching at an elementary school. Once he impregnated a contract teacher and continued his abuse, even in her 9th month, yet he wasn't fired. By 2013, consumed by the website, he stopped teaching and the Education Department halted his salary. Only in 2014 was he officially sacked. Post-scandal, Longland officials ordered all teachers to reflect on Wang Jie's case as a warning. The People's Political Magazine and Procurator 8 Daily raised a burning question. Was the punishment too lenient, a key issue lack of witnesses? The case's long timeline and victims' reluctance like Maisie and Akai to testify hindered justice. After Wang Jie's arrest, police urged victims and families to provide evidence. CHAS SUA contacted every reachable victim, but most had rebuilt lives. Some in college, others married with families. They refused to reopen old wounds or face public scrutiny. To aid the investigation, these girls would have to rip open unhealed scars, enduring judgment from family, friends, and neighbors. After Wang Jie's arrest, Maisie fled to Beijing to work seeking escape. Public discourse often ignored the perpetrator, fixating instead on the victims' bodies and survival choices. Sighs over lost purity or questions like, why didn't they just say no? Dismiss their pain as unworthy of respect. We say it's not the victim's fault, but their suffering proves otherwise. Their pain, outsiders can't fathom it. If refusing to testify was their shield against agony, neither law nor society can condemn them. It's not heroic, but it's not blameworthy. The real failure lies in oversight and legal systems that must be strengthened. They can't erase crime, but they can expose it? Story 3. In 2012, a chilling wave of disappearances swept through Yunnan, China. 17 people vanished without a trace, mostly healthy teenagers. Authorities found no clear leads despite months of investigation. Then a shocking suspicion emerged. Every case tied back to Jin Yongming's cold storage facility, an ostrich farm. Jin Yongming, a man granted land and subsidies for farming, had been processing and selling ostrich meat at the local market since 2008. But a horrifying truth lurked beneath the surface. The meat wasn't from ostriches. It was the remains of the missing victims. When authorities dug deeper, they uncovered a nightmare. For years, Jin Yongming had been selling human remains on the open market undetected. The revelation stunned the public, sparking questions that burned like wildfire. How could one man snuff out so many lives, turn their bodies into ostrich meat, and sell it to unsuspecting villagers? What had the local authorities been doing all this time? How did Jin Yongming deceive an entire community, profiting off such savagery without raising suspicion? Was he part of a larger criminal network? Or was this the work of a lone, ruthless predator who were his victims? And how could these atrocities go unnoticed for so long? In 2007, Jin Yongming received a hefty compensation from the Namen village authorities in Jining Town, Yunnan Province, to build a cold storage facility and start an ostrich farm. He began selling ostrich meat at the local market in 2008. But Zhang was no ordinary farmer. He had a dark past with a prior conviction tied to loss of life and had only returned to village in 1997 after serving his sentence. Secretive and reclusive, he was shunned by many, with parents warning their children to steer clear of him. Yet, after launching his farm, Jin started selling ostrich meat at suspiciously low prices. Some villagers recalled seeing him sitting at the village gate in the dead of night, surrounded by ferocious dogs, a strange, unsettling sight. Others noticed the unusually cheap ostrich meat at the market, but dismissed it as low quality. By March 2008, a string of mysterious disappearances began haunting Nan village. The victims were mostly young men from teenagers to their early 20s. All vanishing while alone on quiet roads near Jin Yongming's home and fields. The cases piled up, each one eerily close to his property. By 2011, the disappearances hit a grim peak. 7 young men vanished in a single year. The police were at a loss, often shrugging off responsibility despite desperate pleas from families. No formal investigations were launched, and the village began whispering about a series of vanishings. The culprit remained a shadow. Rumors swirled like a storm. Were the missing being kidnapped for forced labor in illegal brick kilns outside the province? Were their lives brutally stolen? Or were their bodies being sold for profit in some unspeakable trade? On April 25, 2012, Pao, a 19-year-old student interning at a construction site in Jining, vanished without a trace. That morning, he walked to his dormitory to retrieve documents as instructed by his supervisor. The young man never returned. His disappearance became the turning point in this chilling case. By early May 2012, Jining police noticed unsettling details in Pao's case. Tracing his route from the construction site to the dormitory, they pinpointed his last known location and the desolate Nanmen Bridge eerily close to Jin Yong's home. When questioning locals, officers were stunned by a chilling remark. People who walked this road in recent years, they just disappear. A victim's family didn't hesitate to name Jin Yongming as the prime suspect. The father of Li Mozang, a young man who vanished near Namen Bridge years earlier, insisted Zhang was behind his son's death. He recounted Zhenang's dark past tied to a prior conviction for taking a life. Suspicion had simmered for years. With these leads, police finally zeroed in on Zhang Yongming, securing approval from higher authorities to act. On May 9, 2012, police stormed Jin Yong's home in Naman village. Villagers and reporters swarmed the scene, drawn to the unfolding horror. During the search, investigators uncovered damning evidence linked to Pao, the most recent missing person. His mobile phone, SIM card, bank card, and personal documents. The findings were undeniable. Jin was connected to the disappearance and likely the perpetrator. As the search deepened, the farm revealed a nightmare beyond comprehension. Hidden meticulously in Zhang's home and garden were plastic bags filled with human bones and body parts. The gruesome remains were immediately sent for DNA analysis, which matched the profiles of missing individuals, including 11 young men reported missing by their families in prior years. Further searches uncovered more horrors as clothing, shoes, ropes, and knives scattered across Zhang's property. Among them was clothing from a young man who vanished in 2011, identified by his mother as her son's. Tools of terror, duct-taped nylon cords, and a cleaver stained with what appeared to be blood cemented the scale of Chang's atrocities. That same night, Jin Yongming was arrested to face questioning for the deliberate slaughter of dozens of innocent victims. Over the next 20 days, police worked relentlessly collecting a trove of evidence from the suspect's home: human bones, murder weapons, and more. DNA testing confirmed the brutal deaths of 11 individuals, including young men who had vanished in previous years. On May 27, 2012, Chinese authorities announced a breakthrough. Jin Yongming was confirmed as the savage killer behind the murders of numerous young men. Charged with intentional homicide, he was detained while the identities of his victims were pieced together from bones and evidence. During interrogations, Jin Yongming's confession stunned investigators with their sheer brutality. He admitted to killing possibly over 20 people, recounting his methods with chilling precision. His process was as follows. He targeted secluded roads near his home in Nam village, striking in the early morning or late at night, his victims young, healthy men walking alone. Exploiting the element of surprise, Zhang attacked swiftly, strangling them with his bare hands, ropes, or duct tape until they showed no signs of life. Forensic reports confirmed most victims died from mechanical asphyxiation and their necks crushed. Minimal signs of struggle suggested Jin struck with ruthless speed, leaving no chance for resistance. After ending a victim's life, the killer dragged the body to his dilapidated 20-meter house tucked among the village homes. There he dismembered the corpses, methodically disposing of the remains. Evidence revealed Zhang dug pits in his vegetable garden to bury body parts. Others were hidden in a dry well or a nearby water pit. Scorch marks at the scene exposed his attempts to burn evidence. A calculated move to erase his tracks. Chang's crimes hidden for years right under the village's nose, but the horror deepened. Chang didn't just kill. He desecrated his victims. He confessed to processing their bodies like ostrich meat. Thighs and buttocks were salted and smoked using traditional Yunnan methods, then hung in his home. Worse still, he admitted to soaking over 40 pairs of eyes and alcohol, believing the folk superstition that such a concoction could enhance vitality. The rest he and his pack of ferocious dogs consumed them over time. When the supply outstripped his needs, Jean sold the excess at the market disguised as cheap ostrich meat. Unwitting villagers bought it unaware they were purchasing the remains of their neighbors or even their own children. Probing Jean Yanjing's motives, psychologists and investigators reached a chilling conclusion. His savage crimes stem not from greed, but from a deeply warped psyche. He didn't steal valuables from his victims. Most were poor. Their belongings kept, his trophies were never sold. No personal grudges or feuds linked him to his targets, many of whom were strangers passing near his home. Was Jean a thrill killer driven by a sick satisfaction in violence? His confession suggested as much. He spoke of his murders with eerie calm, even pride, boasting about turning victims into delicacies like smoked meat and medicinal wine. Though police withheld some details, Chang's confessions and village rumors spread like wildfire, intensifying the horror. The brutality of his actions left the public reeling, struggling to fathom such depravity. For the families of the murdered youths, the truth was a devastating blow. Their loved ones were not only killed but dismembered. Their bodies too fragmented for proper burial. Parents, who had searched tirelessly for years, now faced unbearable grief. Lai Muang, father of Li Mong, who vanished in 2009, burned with rage. He had long suspected Jiang Yongming and pleaded with authorities only to be ignored. Speaking to the press, he said bitterly, "If the police had listened sooner, my son and so many others might still be here." The authorities' negligence fueled outrage. Families stormed the county office demanding answers. Why did it take the 17th disappearance, Hanyeo, for police to act? Under public pressure, local officials issued apologies and offered initial compensation to the victims' families, calculated at approximately $4,000 per family. But no amount could heal the wounds. Many parents collapsed into despair. Some fell gravely ill from the shock. Nan village was cloaked in grief and dread, forever scarred by the tragedy. The village atmosphere turned heavy with sorrow and fury. Locals were stunned to learn that the devil Jiang Yongming had lived among them unnoticed. Those who had bought meat from him, played chess with him or shared vegetables, shuddered at the memories. One neighbor recalled, "I thought he was odd but harmless. How could he be so cruel?" Villagers blamed themselves for ignoring red flags. Chang's dogs barking strangely at night, or the heavy sacks he hauled to his garden after midnight. At the time, they seemed peculiar but not alarming. Fear of confronting a man with a criminal past or dismissing it as his business kept them silent. The aftermath left Naman haunted. Sleepless nights and panic gripped residents. Whispers spread that the victims' spirits lingered at the crime scenes, casting a grim shadow over the village. Some families even hired shamans to perform rituals, seeking to guide the restless souls to peace and ward off evil. On the day Jiang Yanjing was taken away, an angry mob gathered, hurling insults and stones at his house. Some shouted, "Let us deal with him." Authorities intervened to prevent vigilante justice, but the community's hatred and revulsion ran deep. Even Jiang's own family faced backlash. His relatives fled the village to escape the stigma. His blood-soaked house, the crime scene, was sealed off for investigation. Later, authorities demolished it to prevent it from becoming a morbid attraction for those drawn to the devil's house. At the preliminary trial, Jin Yanjing's demeanor sent chills through the courtroom. Cold and unrepentant, he offered no apologies to the victims' families, no excuses, no pleas of innocence, just silence. He accepted his fate with eerie indifference, filing no appeal after the verdict. The prosecution saw no need to contest the sentence. It matched the monstrous crimes he'd committed. His refusal to show remorse or justify his actions revealed a complete absence of conscience, a hallmark of a highly antisocial personality. Jiang displayed no guilt, no fear, even facing death. His chilling detachment marked him as a profoundly dangerous criminal beyond rehabilitation. On January 8, 2013, the Yunnan Province High People's Court sentenced Jiang Yongming to death, forwarding the case to the Supreme People's Court for approval. After review, the Supreme Court authorized the execution. On the morning of January 10, 2013, Jean was taken to an execution ground in Kunming. His identity confirmed. Authorities carried out the sentence by firing squad. Within minutes, Yunnan's devil paid for his crimes, closing the legal chapter of the case. In a press release that day, Chinese authorities emphasized the sentence as a testament to the law's severity and justice served for Chiang's heinous acts. The case underscored China's resolve to harshly punish serious crimes and warned that any protectors or enablers would face consequences. After Chiang's execution, Namen village exhaled a collective sigh of relief as if waking from a nightmare. With most victims' bodies destroyed, families buried mere fragments of remains. Communal memorials were held at local temples and schools where people prayed for the souls of the young men who died in agony. Years after the case closed, its psychological toll lingers. In Nanmen, the name Jin Yanjing still evokes pain and fear. In later interviews, residents admitted they'd lost faith in community safety and local law enforcement, who ignored early warnings. Fear kept parents from letting children out at night for years. Some young people fled Nan, unable to bear the haunting memories. The term ostrich meat became a chilling symbol, not just of terror, but of betrayal and shattered trust. Though life in the village has slowly normalized, the case's shadow remains. The ostrich meat saga is no ordinary crime. It's a wound Nan men can never fully heal. The pain, panic, and unease persist, a dark cloud over those who lived through those days. This case forces us to question the effectiveness of local law enforcement and security systems. Justice was served, but the authorities' failure to investigate earlier vanishings cost lives. It highlights the urgent need for timely, vigilant law enforcement that heeds every sign of crime. Story 4. On a grim afternoon in Fangin District, Taichung City, police forced their way into a house and froze. At the harrowing sight, 5 members of a family lay motionless beside a cold, black and charcoal brazier, as if a somber ritual had reached its grim conclusion. Scattered around the scene were several suicide notes, their haunting words etched in despair. There's no way out. Let's all go together. Why would a seemingly warm, tight-knit family choose to end their lives as one? The answer slowly unraveled through a golden bean investment scheme, promising dazzling profits, but concealing a chilling trap. That sowed the seeds for this show. Now, let's unravel the story of this devastating case. Funyuan, a historic district teeming with life in central Taiwan, is known for its peaceful charm, vibrant traditional markets, and tight-knit community. Yet, in early July 2025, this very place was shaken to its core by horrific news. A family of 5 found dead in their rented home, sending shockwaves not just through Funyuan, but across Taiwan. Initial reports vaguely described a 5-person murder case tied to a charcoal brazier, leaving the public reeling with questions. Was this a collective suicide or a tragic carbon monoxide accident? All 5 victims, middle-aged parents, and their 3 adult children, showed no signs of external injuries or struggle. If they willingly descended into the abyss, what desperate motive drove an entire family to such an end? Or if this was a crime, who was the perpetrator? And how did they orchestrate the quiet demise of 5 souls? The suicide notes hinting at a crushing debt and apologies for trusting the wrong person only deepen the mystery. The story begins on July 2, 2025, when an urgent call lit up the Funyuan police station. The caller, a co-worker of Wang IQ name, changed a mechanic at a local factory, reported that Wang had been absent from work for 2 days. Without explanation, his phone eerily silent. Sensing something was wrong, the co-worker alerted the authorities. Local police quickly contacted Hung Guinlong with the neighborhood chief where the Wang family lived. At 5:48 p.m. that day, a team of officers, the chief and a locksmith, stood before the family's rented home, which doubled as their small shop. The door was locked tight, and no one answered their calls. With the locksmith's help, the iron door creaked open, revealing a scene that left everyone present in stunned silence. Inside, 5 bodies lay neatly side by side, motionless. The air was thick with the acrid stench of half-burned charcoal. Near the bodies, a spent brazier lay discarded, a telltale sign of carbon monoxide poisoning often used in suicides. At first glance, there were no wounds, no signs of a struggle, and the room was undisturbed. In the dim light, police spotted a stack of handwritten letters on the table pointing to a likely mass suicide. But why would 5 people, parents, and their 3 grown children, choose to descend into darkness together? The question sent chills through the scenes. Commander, I've been in this job for years, but I've never seen an entire family perish so tragically like this. The victims' identities were swiftly confirmed through documents at the scene. Names changed. They were Wang GX, 62, the family patriarch, his wife, Duchavi, 63, and their 3 children, eldest daughter, Wang Le, 35, second daughter, Wang Leibi, 34, and youngest son Wang IQ, 28. The devastating news was relayed to superiors and forensic and criminal investigation units rushed to the scene. The site inside the small home, which doubled as a military surplus shop, haunted seasoned investigators. 5 bodies lay side by side on the bedroom floor, arranged so neatly, it seemed they had calmly awaited their final moments. No signs of resistance or external force were found. All doors were locked from the inside. The charcoal brazier often used for carbon monoxide poisoning had burned out, its ashes scattered. The air conditioner and fan were off, and door gaps were sealed with wet cloths, showing meticulous preparation to trap lethal co-gas on the table for suicide. Notes were neatly stacked beside a dead phone. Each note penned by Lee Ali B and IQ echoed the same crushing despair they spoke of. Insurmountable debts, a dead end driven by financial ruin, and most heart-wrenching the words, "We have no choice but to leave this world together." Notably, the daughter's notes expressed regret for trusting a friend named Jean and falling for a fake investment. These were critical clues. Mr. Wong left no note. Initial forensics confirmed all 5 died from high levels of co-poisoning, consistent with the sealed room charcoal setup. Estimated time of death was over 24 hours earlier, likely the night of July 1 or early morning of July 6, 2025. No traces of poison or injuries were found, ruling out assassination initially. Neighbors described the Wong family as reserved, keeping to themselves. Dutch Wong's wife was known as calm and diligent, running a shop selling police uniforms and accessories from their home. Wong Jux helped his wife while working at a pork stall in the market to make ends meet. Their children were Lee, 35. Single, selling goods online from home, Libby, 34, a career soldier, and IQ, 28. A factory mechanic. Acquaintances insisted the family had no internal conflicts and wasn't destitute, making their collective suicide baffling. The investigation shifted to decoding the cryptic clues left behind the dead, the gold investment, and the friend named Jean. That night, July 2nd, authorities sealed the scene and seized the victims' phones and computers for data analysis. A snag emerged. 4 of the 5 phones were dead, requiring time to charge and bypass security. Yet, the suicide notes offered a vital lead detailing a gold investment scam that led to a debt of 5 million TWWD. The notes pointed to Jean, Lee's school friend, as the one who lured them into the trap. Investigators zeroed in on this lead. Lee had a close friend, Jean, 35, from her high school days with whom she stayed in touch. Recently, Lee had mentioned to relatives earning thousands of TWWD through gold investments via Zhang. Cross-referencing the notes, Zhang became the prime suspect. By the morning of July 3, police summoned friends and relatives for statements. A friend of Mrs. D provided a chilling revelation around June 25. D had texted her pleading for help, saying the family was swindled in a golden bean investment scam, losing everything and facing threats. In her final message, D choked out, "If this is it, our family, we're done." This matched the note's despairing tone. No way out. It's all over. Clearly, the family was in utter desperation, ensnared by deceit and intimidation. Another clue came from a local counselor's office days before the tragedy on June 21. Mr. and Mrs. Wong had sought help from City Councilor Yi Jizhong. Wong texted she, "Our family was scammed. All our money's gone and they're demanding more. While threatening to smash our shop, I need a meeting for legal advice." She responded promptly, inviting them to his office and offering help. But minutes later, Wong texted back, "It was A misunderstanding. It's sorted now. No worries. Thank you. This abrupt shift from panic to claiming it's sorted stunned Shay. He had urged the Wangs to report the scam to police, warning of ballooning debts from predatory loans. But the family, likely terrified by threats, avoided legal recourse. From these findings, investigators were certain the Wangs' death stemmed from a ruthless scam. The next target tracked down Jiang. Found a friend named in the notes, and others who drove the family to ruin. Police visited Jiang's beauty salon in Fengdian based on gathered intel. The small shop was shuttered when they arrived on July 3 afternoon, and Jiang was unreachable by phone. The landlord reported Jiang had closed shop on July 1, her phone off, and even her family couldn't contact her. This sudden disappearance fueled suspicions of her involvement and possible flight. A quick search of the salon yielded no significant documents, but uncovered receipts showing Chang's frequent gold transactions. Meanwhile, neighbors and local creditors painted a clearer picture of the family's final days. Neighbors recounted a chilling scene on the afternoon of June 30. A group of 3 or 4 strangers stormed into the Wang's shop, loudly demanding payment, calling themselves the Li creditors. They claimed the family owed 2 million to Li for breaching a contract. A heated argument erupted before they moved inside to negotiate behind closed doors. When the group left, the Wangs' faces were ashen, drained of hope. By the evening of July 1, a pawn shop worker arrived, seizing 2 motorcycles and a car citing unpaid debts. The picture was grim, and the Wangs' home was mortgaged, their vehicles gone, and their lives under constant threat. Police believe the family's fatal decision was made after that fateful July 1, when their last assets vanished. Alongside witness accounts, the tech team recovered data from the victims' phones, peeling back the layers of the scam that ensnared them. On Li's phone, investigators found a line chat group named Gold Bean Group with dozens of members. Digging through its history, they learned that in early June 2025, Li was invited to the group by Gene username Jenny Jiang. The group buzzed with talk of a golden bean investment scheme, buying small gold bars dubbed golden beans for quick profits. Admins frequently posted receipts flaunting thousands of TB duty and gains, painting the project as legitimate and lucrative. A user named Lilial, claiming to be the project manager, posted enticing offers. Invest 150,000 terabytes in gold, get a $3,000 commission, instantly a 2% return per transaction. Lured by Chang's persuasion, Li was hooked by the promise of easy money. Messages showed she joined early rounds, swiping her credit card for $150,000 TWWD for a Dexcom 15 at USD in gold and receiving the promised $3,000 TWWD 92 commission. The scheme seemed too good to be true, so Li roped in her mother and sister. The entire family, 5 in all, scrambled funds, draining savings and maxing out credit cards to buy gold as instructed. By mid-June, they'd sunk to 3 million TWWD, $61,538, to $92.38 into the scheme. Early transactions paid small commissions, reinforcing their trust in the gold project. It was a classic scam tactic to dangle small profits to build confidence, then reel victims in for bigger losses. But around June 20, the scam turned sinister. Lil announced in the group that the company's accounts were frozen for investigation, halting commission payments. Panic swept the members, especially the Wangs, who'd bet nearly all their savings. Jean stepped in, calming Lee and claiming she knew a Lee investor behind the gold project who could secure a refund. Desperate, Mrs. Du and Lee agreed to meet this Ms. Lee. At the meeting, Lee, posing as a company rep, accused the Wangs of breaching the investment contract by halting contributions mid-cycle. She demanded $2 million TWWD, $61,538. In compensation, threatening legal action. Terrified and cornered, the Wangs begged for leniency. Lee offered to deal a $2 million TWWD loan to settle the debt secured by their apartment. Desperate to recover, Mr. and Mrs. Wang signed mortgaging their home for a high-interest loan from a Zhonghua loan shark ring. They handed the money to Lee. Days later, the scammers flipped. They called Mrs. D, claiming additional fees of $3 million TWWD due to debt odd $846, the exact debt mentioned in the suicide notes. Reeling from the first blow, the family now faced a crushing new debt on paper. Interest rates skyrocketed with daily penalties piling up. From late June, the Wangs endured relentless psychological torment. Relatives said they received dozens of daily calls from unknown numbers demanding payment with threats to ruin their business if they didn't comply. Jean the friend hounded Lee, insisting she pressure her parents to pay. Lei vowed to sell personal assets to clear the debt, but compounding interest outpaced her efforts. Lee, likely blaming herself for the catastrophe, sank into deep depression. As July loomed, the family's situation grew dire. Debt collectors showed up at their door, threatening violence. The roles of Lee and Jean, creditor and friend, left the Wangs paralyzed, unsure who to trust. 2. Scared to alert police and unable to afford a lawyer, they were trapped. Yet, in their final moments, Mrs. Duke clung to a flicker of hope. She asked a friend to contact a journalist to expose the scam. But before that could happen, the debt collector's visit on June 30th and the pawn shop seizure on July 1st crushed them. Losing their vehicles and facing threats that proved all too real, the family collapsed under the weight. They chose to end their suffering together, believing in their tragic logic that leaving anyone behind would only mean more pain. The suicide notes words, "No way out, we all go together," captured their despair. On the night of July 1st, 2025, with doors sealed tight, the family of 5 gathered in their small bedroom. They likely held each other, tears falling for the last time. Mr. Wang quietly lit the charcoal brazier. As the flames took hold, odorless CO gas filled the room. Mrs. Du closed her eyes, whispering Buddhist prayers. 5 lives, cornered by betrayal, lay down on a prepared mat. The co worked swiftly, lulling them into unconsciousness. Perhaps in their final moments, the glittering promise of golden beans flashed before them, only to fade into the thick charcoal smoke. By midnight, the last heartbeat in the room fell silent. The family of 5 ended their lives in quiet, heartbreaking tragedy, leaving behind a searing question of trust and crime. With the cause of death clear, investigators shifted their focus to dismantling the scam ring. On July 4, 2025, armed with mounting evidence, Tai Chong police issued urgent summons for 2 suspects, Zhang Leu's friend and a woman surnamed Li around 40, who posed as the gold project manager and directly extorted the Wang family. Both were absent from their residences, forcing police to deploy advanced tactics, tracing their phone signals and recent contacts. By noon on July 4, detectives pinpointed Jiang's phone at a small hotel in Sichuan district. A task force swooped in, arresting her without resistance. At the station, Chang's mother and boyfriend arrived frantic, pleading her innocence. She only introduced friends to each other. She wasn't involved in any investments, but the evidence was damning. Line chat logs showed Zhang actively luring Lai Yue into the scheme. Private messages revealed she earned commissions for recruiting new investors. Jean was detained for questioning. Meanwhile, Li, the mastermind behind the Golden Bean scam, who handled the deal closing, had a prior conviction for financial fraud and was already on the investigation bureau's radar. Chang's testimony and collected evidence confirmed Li as the ringleader. That evening, police tracked Li to a friend's house in Zhonghua with a search and arrest warrant. Approved by the prosecutor's office, officers stormed in at 9 p.m. on July 4, apprehending Li. She remained composed but evasive. Both Jean and Li denied responsibility for the Wang's deaths, distancing themselves from the tragedy. Jean claimed she only introduced friends to business, unaware it was a scam. We insisted they willingly borrowed money to invest. I just followed the contract. Their deflections crumbled against the weight of evidence. By dawn on July 5, the Central Investigation Bureau and police expanded searches, seizing computers and ledgers from Li's network. Evidence suggested the ring had swindled dozens more victims with similar tactics. On the morning of July 5, the Taichung prosecutor's office charged Zhang with fraudulent appropriation of property and issued a travel ban pending further investigation. Li remained in custody for deeper interrogation. At a noon press conference, Wang Kaixiu, deputy chief of Fangwin Police, declared, "We view this as a grave fraud case leading to loss of life. All involved, from masterminds to intermediaries, will face rigorous investigation and punishment." Excerpts from the family's 4 suicide notes were revealed with one line: "Piercing hearts. We regret trusting Jean. Regret chasing fake investments. Drowned in debt, we can't repay. We choose to leave." These words directly name Jean, the trusted friend, as a key culprit in the tragedy. The killers in this case wielded no weapons, only deception, cloaked as investment opportunity. Investigations pinpointed Zhang and Li as the primary culprits facing criminal charges. Zhang Li's old school friend ran a beauty salon. Outwardly friendly and persuasive, she exploited Li's trust. Zhang joined the Golden Bean scam ring a year earlier as a broker using personal connections to recruit investors for commissions. In the Wang's case, she leveraged her long friendship with Leia. While Jean may not have directly handled money or issued threats, she was the bridge that led the family into the trap. The victims' notes lamenting their trust in Zhang underscored her pivotal role. Li, the mastermind, went by Lily in the scam group. Around 41, with a prior fraud conviction in prison time, she orchestrated the Golden Bean scheme, setting up chat groups, dangling initial commissions, then freezing accounts and demanding penalties. Posing as a gold investment firm manager, she met the Wang's using fake contracts and breach penalties to extort more money. Leah hired loan sharks and mob enforcers to squeeze every last cent from victims, pushing them to ruin. With ties to central Taiwan's underworld, Leah was cunning, vanishing after the Wang's deaths to avoid scrutiny. But the suicide notes exposed her role with stark clarity. Their motive was pure greed. To them, victims were mere prey to exploit, consequences be damned. No evidence suggested Zhang or Leah had personal ties or grudges with the Wangs. They targeted them for their vulnerability and assets. Their mindset was chillingly ruthless. When the scam unraveled, they focused on evading justice, showing no remorse for the 5 deaths. This callousness fueled public outrage, demanding harsh punishment. They likely saw lives as expendable, prioritizing escape and profit. But they miscalculated. The Wang's suicide notes became a searing indictment, exposing their crimes. Within days, police tracked down the mastermind and her accomplice. Regret came too late. Now these predators face justice, paying the price for their greed that stole an entire family's lives. In Taiwan, fraud with severe consequences carries heavy penalties. On July 6, 2025, the Taichung prosecutor's office charged Zhang and Li with organized fraudulent appropriation of property. Aggravating factors, threats, and the catastrophic outcome of 5 deaths were under review. While Taiwan's laws lack a specific indirect homicide charge for fraud, prosecutors vowed to pursue the harshest possible sentences. Zhang was released on bail but barred from leaving the area while he remained in custody to prevent evidence tampering. The preliminary trial slated for late 2025. Prosecutors will lay bare the Golden Bean scam's sinister plot, asserting that Zhang and Li directly caused the family's tragic end. Xian's defense may argue she acted unintentionally, claiming she too lost money in the scheme to distance herself from complicity. But with damning chat logs showing her commission earnings and the victim's suicide notes explicitly condemning her, this defense seems shaky. Li, with her prior fraud conviction and thuggish intimidation tactics, has little room to dodge guilt. The Phone family's tragedy sent shockwaves through Taiwan. Major networks aired specials with experts dissecting the criminals' psychological manipulation and condemning their ruthless tactics. Online forums buzzed with grief for the ill-fated family and fury demanding public trials and severe punishment for the scammers. The case sparked deep societal questions. First, how could an educated, honest family like the Wangs fall so painfully into a trap? The answer lies in the scammers' cunning exploitation of human greed and trust. The Wangs were ensnared by faith in a friend and the lure of quick profits. The lesson is stark. No investment promising high returns with zero risk is ever legitimate. Second, support for financial scam victims needs urgent attention. The Wangs sought help but retreated in fear. Had they reported the scam early, their losses might have been mitigated. Taiwan's police have dedicated anti-fraud units urging citizens to use legal channels such as court-ordered debt relief to counter predatory loans. Tragically, shame and fear silenced the Wangs. Councillor Ji Zhang, devastated by the news, said, "If they'd returned to my office, we could have connected them with police and legal aid, but they never came back." This is a wake-up call. Scam victims must seek help without hesitation. To prevent such tragedies, experts urge authorities to boost awareness of legal protections, guide victims through processes, and involve civic groups to negotiate with creditors. Above all, victims must know life outweighs money lost. Funds can be regained, but not lost lives. Third, the case sounds an alarm about the erosion of trust and friendship in modern society. It's heart-wrenching that a friend led the family to ruin. While not all betray like Jean, this shows even close relationships can be exploited for profit. The public must stay vigilant. Scams don't always come from strangers. Sometimes they hide behind familiar faces. Always verify financial offers independently, never trusting blindly, out of loyalty or courtesy. The case closed with the tragic loss of 5 innocent lives, but its ripples endure. In Taiwan, from now on, tales of too good to be true investments will evoke this tragedy, urging caution. The Wang's deaths, though senseless, may spur society and lawmakers to crack down harder on fraud, ensuring no other family suffers the same fate. Story 5. Now we bring you a tale of a blazing fraud chain and a string of murders that shocked all of India. Unlike the brutal blood-soaked serial killers of the past, this perpetrator was polished, courteous, almost charming. He never struck, never cursed, never even brandished a weapon. His only weapon was a simple promise. I want to marry you. The southern Indian state of Karnataka is an economic and cultural powerhouse. Its capital Bangalore, dubbed India's Silicon Valley, hosts more than a third of the nation's tech talent and dominates the global IT outsourcing market. With ancient dynastic roots, stunning geographic diversity and a booming tech scene, Karnataka sets the stage for today's story. Anita lived in the small town of Buntaval, South Kannur district. 10 years ago, at age 22, she was of marrying age. Her family scraped together a sizable dowry, but the right groom never appeared, fueling their anxiety. On 17th of June 2009, Anita vanished. She took gold jewelry worth a 270s Lao cellar and the mobile phone her parents had bought for the wedding. She never returned. Terrified, her family raced to the police. Local officers shrugged. They labeled it a runaway romance, just another case of love. Jihad, a term for organized Muslim men allegedly luring Hindu women into conversion through marriage. They concluded Anita had eloped with a Muslim man and changed faith. The family erupted, outraged by the lazy verdict. They rallied friends, neighbors, and the local Hindu community. At least 150 people stormed the station demanding a full investigation and warning. If you don't solve this, we'll burn the place down. Higher UPS felt the heat. Fearful of mob fury, they upgraded the case to priority status. Yet, clues were scarce. Anita left no note. No witness saw her go. The lone lead was her phone. Detectives pulled her call log and found one number she had dialed constantly before disappearing. Unknown to her family. The SIM traced back to Shreyer, a man living in Mudekari. Police moved fast and took him into custody. I registered that SIM. Yes, Shredar admitted, but the person who's actually been using it is my sister Kavali. She vanished on March 17th. No trace. Nothing. That confession spun the investigation on its head. Detectives pulled Kavali's call history. The pattern was identical to Anita's in the days before she disappeared. She'd been in constant contact with an unknown number. So, the tracing game began again. The new number led to a woman named Pushpa, also missing. Same story. Same timeline. Officers dug deeper and landed on another woman, Vinuda. She too was gone. 4 women, all evaporated. Suddenly, the force understood the scale of the nightmare. Police rushed out. Statewide alerts across Karnataka, ordering every precinct to share files on unexplained female disappearances and suspicious deaths. The numbers were chilling: more than 20 missing women and dozens of unexplained fatalities. 1 case stood out in Hassan, 160 kilometers from Anita's home. Local officers discovered a woman's body inside a public bus station restroom on June 18. Family confirmation it was Anita. She was dressed in a gorgeous traditional bridal sari. Yet every piece of jewelry had been stripped away. Cause of death: cyanide poisoning. The door had been locked from the inside. No struggle marks, no sign of forced entry. Every clue screamed suicide. But why would a bride to be brimming with hope travel 160 kilometers just to end her life alone in a filthy restroom? Something was off, way off. Detectives knew the truth behind this chain of disappearances and deaths would untangle everything. They doubled down, following the cold metallic breadcrumb trail of phone numbers. What followed was a grim peeling of layers. Each SIM led to another until 20 missing women were finally identified. 2 constants emerged. Every SIM had pinged the same tiny village dried. 2 all. The cards proved by a single IMI had been slotted into one mobile handset. Whoever owned that phone was the puppet master. He'd recycle each victim's SIM to lure the next woman, creating a terrifying daisy chain trap. The handset's unique ID pointed to a teenager named Daz, clearly not the mastermind. He claimed the phone came from his uncle Mohan Kumar, an elementary school teacher. When police reached the school, Mohan had long been dismissed. No one knew his whereabouts. Detectives combed witness statements, local rumors, dusty missing person files, anything to map his movements. That's when a seamstress named Sumitra dropped a bombshell. She'd seen Mohan escorting Anita onto a bus bound for Hassan back in June. Even more alarming, in 2005, Mohan had posed as an election supervisor and proposed marriage to her. She'd refused. Recently, he'd contacted her again. The plan was obvious: lure the snake from its hole. Sumitra agreed to call Mohan, pretending she'd finally accepted his proposal, and arranged a meeting. October 24, 2009. Sumitra waited at the South Kanra bus stand. Plainclothes officers melted into the crowd. The moment Mohan appeared, the trap snapped shut. After months of dread and dozens of ruined lives, India's cyanide killer was in cuffs. Shockingly, when news of Mohan's arrest spread through the village, many refused to believe their ears. To most, he was a respected teacher, gentle, polite, honest to a fault, especially to his wife. She saw him as a devoted husband, always striving, always providing. How could he be a serial killer? Mhannar was born on April 6, 1963 in South Kanra, Karnataka, into a Dutt family. He had 2 brothers and a sister. His parents toiled as manual laborers, scraping by at society's fringes. When Mohan was 10, his father abandoned the family, vanishing without a trace. Despite crushing poverty, his mother fought to give him an education, hoping he'd claw his way to a better life. And Mohan didn't disappoint. He studied hard, aced his exams, and became one of the Ville's rare university graduates, a source of pride, a beacon of hope. In November 1984, Mohan's life soared. He landed a coveted job as a teacher at a public primary school in South Kanra. Stable, respectable, a golden ticket to government tenure. Every day he dressed neatly, carried himself with sincerity. To colleagues and students, he was a model educator revered and admired. In 1987, at 25, Mohan married an 18-year-old he deeply loved. But their marriage crumbled. Why? Mary clung to her Christian faith, refusing to convert to Hinduism. By 1992, Mohan wed his second wife, Mula. She devoted herself to him. Bore him 2 children. Yet, Mohan's greed knew no bounds. Secretly, he married another woman, Shray Devi, who also gave him 2 children. He kept them apart in separate homes. And astonishingly, for years, neither knew the other existed. To both wives, Mohan was the ideal husband, hard-working, loyal, always providing. To his children, a kind father, ever present, with lies and meticulous planning, he juggled 2 families flawlessly. For nearly a decade, he hid this double life. A master of time management, no question. Mohan thrived in his personal schemes, but his career faltered. Unexplained absences and improper conduct led to suspensions, transfers, setbacks. The worst came in 2003. He pushed a river. Miraculously, fishermen saved her. Charged with attempted murder, Mohan denied it all. She wanted to marry me. I refused. In the argument, she slipped and fell, not my doing. The judge, perhaps swayed by his teacher status, believed him. 1 month in prison, a slap on the wrist. That month, behind bars changed everything. In jail, Mohan met a jeweler locked up for illegally dumping cyanide waste. The man had used cyanide to clean gold jewelry, then carelessly discarded it, poisoning 8 cows and goats. He told Mohan cyanide is lethal, swift and cheap. Back then a kilo cost just $250 rupees, about $10 in June 2025 terms. Mohan memorized every word. This knowledge forged India's cyanide Mohan. Soon after his release, the school fired him. Chronic tardiness, rule breaking and a criminal record sealed his fate. Furious, Mohan applied to other schools, but his past haunted him. Rejections piled up, other jobs scarce. Failure consumed him. A university graduate, a respected teacher, now nothing. How had it come to this? He refused to accept it. He couldn't bear to tell his family or friends. So, he lied. Claimed he still taught at a remote school, dressed sharply, left home daily, upholding the teacher's facade. The lie fooled his families, but the bills didn't stop. 2 households, 2 sets of expenses. Where would the money come from? Day by day, his savings dwindled to nothing. Dark, twisted thoughts festered in Mohan's mind. The jeweler's tales of cyanide sparked a sinister inspiration, a vile path to riches. Mohan later confessed in his low-caste world, men had empty pockets, but women they held treasures. Especially brides to be adorned with valuable jewelry and gold. In India, deep-rooted misogyny placed women at society's margins. Their worth tied to domestic duties, cooking, raising children. Rarely did they work outside the home, especially after marriage. Seen as burdens, their families offered hefty dowries to grooms as compensation. For poor, low-ras women with plain looks, finding a husband was tougher. Their families scraped together lavish dowries to secure a match. Mohan saw this clearly. Marriage could be his bait. Lure these women, steal their gold and jewels, and amass a fortune. If his charm worked, he'd offer them juice. If that went smoothly, the trap was set. Next, a park stroll to test their comfort with physical touch. After weeks of calculated affection, he'd strike with his final move. I want to marry you. With his education and deliberate facade, Mohan seemed upright, honest. His endless stories captivated. Nearly every woman he targeted fell hard for him. After building trust, he'd propose a private wedding, perhaps at a distant temple or his hometown. To ease the bride's family's doubts, he'd visit them oozing sincerity. Spinning tales of a bright future. Blinded by love, these women couldn't resist. They'd dress in their finest sars, don every piece of gold, necklaces, earrings, bangles prepared by their families. Hearts full of hope. They stepped into the devil's trap. Worse, Mohan planned meticulously. He tracked each woman's menstrual cycle. Striking on her most vulnerable day, he'd take her to a hotel near a bus station far from home. They'd spend the night. The next day, they'd leave for their wedding. That night, he'd ensure intimacy. The next morning, a romantic walk. Citing safety, he'd urge her to leave her valuables at the hotel to collect later. As they strolled near the bus station, he'd play the perfect fiancé, gentle, attentive, painting a rosy future. Then, abruptly, he'd shift. He'd mention their unprotected intimacy the previous night. A pregnancy before marriage disastrous. It could shatter their dreams. He'd produce a pill claiming it was emergency contraception. It might upset your stomach, he'd warn. Gently. Take it in the bus station restroom. Trusting him, she'd enter the restroom, lock the door, and swallow the contraceptive. Unbeknownst to her, it was cyanide, lethal in minutes. Dizziness hit. Her heart raced. Convulsions followed. Too weak to unlock the door or cry for help, she'd collapse lifeless. Mohan would wait outside watching. 30 minutes, no sign of her success. He'd return to the hotel, pack her gold and jewelry aboard the next bus, and vanish into the crowd. With stolen wealth in hand, Mohan waited days before selling the gold at distant shops. Most of the profits split between his two wives for household expenses. His victims came from society's fringes, poor families with no means to investigate. Believing their daughters had married and moved far away, they rarely reported them missing. Mohan even used the victims' phones to contact their families, assuring them all was well, their daughters happy. Suspicion vanished. But wait, you sharp viewers have spotted a Flaw, haven't you? Families didn't report the crimes, but surely the police would find the bodies. Wouldn't they? Investigate. Here's the chilling truth. After each murder, bodies were found sometimes that day, sometimes days later. Yet India's police work was staggeringly inept. No signs of a struggle. The restroom door locked from inside. No missing person reports. A crowded bus station complicating evidence. Their conclusion: sudden illness. Done. Many didn't even bother with autopsies or basic identification. Some officers noticed oddities. Young women too young to just drop dead. 2 victims even had cyanide in their systems. But the trail ended there. No deeper probes. Case after case faded into obscurity. Worse, Mohan struck across different regions under different police jurisdictions. These stations operated in silos, rarely sharing case details with no central database to connect the dots. No one saw the pattern of serial killer at work. With this, every man for himself, a mindset, suspicious deaths of women which should have raised alarms were quietly filed away, sealed, forgotten. Meanwhile, Mullen kept killing. He donned new identities. A suave businessman, a caring doctor, a silver-tongued government official. With honeyed lies, he slipped into his victims' lives time and again. Emboldened by the police's inaction, his confidence grew. He perfected a deadly cycle. When money ran low, he hunted a new target. Once the relationship reached his scripted peak, he followed the same playbook: proposed steel poison. One by one, women dreaming of perfect marriages adorned themselves with their finest jewelry, hearts brimming with hope. One by one they fell to this monster's hands. In 2005, 3 women died. In 2006, 4. In 2007, 3 more. In 2008, 2. By 2009, the toll surged to 9. Over 5 years, at least 21 women met brutal ends. Had Anita's family not fought back, filing a report rallying over 150 furious villagers threatening to burn the police station, authorities might have ignored it all. When the media exposed this horrific serial poisoning, India reeled in shock. Outlets like Dean Herald and Times of India splashed the story across front pages. For weeks, TV specials and news reports made one name infamous. No longer just Mohan. Now he was Cyanide Mohan, a chilling moniker. Hounded by media and public outrage, Mohan in custody denied everything. "I never killed anyone," he insisted. But the police search shattered his lies. At one of his wife's homes, they found a stash of cyanide powder for mobile phones, a fake government-sealed business cards with various titles, and dozens of gold sale receipts. They also uncovered jewelry he hadn't sold linked to Anita and another victim. The truth was undeniable. His 2 wives were devastated. How could their gentle, devoted husband secretly juggle 2 marriages and be a serial killer? Under relentless police questioning, Mohan cracked. He confessed from 2005 to 2009. He used cyanide to kill at least 32 women. Coldly, he admitted forgetting some of their names and faces. He wasn't lying about his memory. When asked his wife's names, he drew a blank. His solution, a notebook. It listed victims' names, their menstrual cycles, and the fake identities he used. This notebook became the police's key evidence. Though Mohan admitted to 32 murders, only 20 had solid evidence. Some bodies were cremated, others lacked proof. Based on these, prosecutors charged him with murder, kidnapping, poisoning, and identity fraud. But before the trial began, Mohan flipped. He retracted his confession, claiming he never killed anyone. Those women, they took poison themselves, heartbroken by his rejection. They were too weak to handle the emotional shock, he sneered. Arrogantly, he refused a lawyer, believing his own cunning would save him. At trial, Mohan dyed his hair black, dressed sharply, a pen tucked in his pocket. Part professor, part lawyer, he exuded calm. He listened intently to the judges jotting notes occasionally. And then he found a crack. He grilled a prosecution witness. Officer Gouda, 1. Document says, I sold the gold. Another says it was pawned. Is this a typo or fabricated evidence? Did I confess or did you, a police officer, make it up? It was just a clerical error. Against the mountain of evidence, witnesses' receipts, the notebook, Mohan's nitpicking defenses crumbled. His arguments feeble, unconvincing. In December 2013, the court sentenced Mohan to death for the murders of Anna Levi and Sinanda. Additional charges piled on 5 years in prison and a $62.50 fine for kidnapping, 8 years $62.50 for humiliation, 3 years and $12.50 for poisoning. The judge's voice thundered with rage. The defendant not only took lives, but defiled the sanctity of love and marriage. He used marriage as a mask for the most heinous crimes. Such evil demands the harshest punishment. But the story didn't end there. In 2017, after Mohan's appeal, the Supreme Court shockingly reduced his death sentence to life imprisonment. Yet, as more cases were tried, he faced death again and racked up 15 life sentences. Still, the saga continued. On June 26, 2020, Mohan received another life sentence for Pushpa's murder, his 20th conviction. Mohan's killing spree shook India to its core. Overnight, this obscure ex-tier became the devil in lover's guise across headlines. No longer just Mohan, the media branded him with chilling names. Cyanide Mohan, the marriage slayer. The press tore into his polished facade, exposing the ruthless predator beneath. Not a madman, but a cunning serial hunter. He preyed on the friest human desires, loneliness, the yearning for marriage. Mohan's method was near perfect, slipping through India's cracks. Poor families, desperate spinsters, misogynies, indifference, cheap cyanide lax, security police negligence, all exploited with brutal precision. Without Anatha's family threatening to burn down the police station, how long would his rampage have lasted? The scandal sparked outrage. Crowds stormed police stations decrying incompetence. A national reckoning followed, exposing systemic flaws. Karnataka tightened cyanide regulations. Buyers now needed a gold trade license, police records, and proof of legal use. A 72-hour inter-district alert system for missing women was established, and unidentified female bodies had to be publicized in local papers for 30 days. To gather leads. Marriage agencies reform too. Real name registration, home addresses, and ID verification became mandatory with cross-checks before weddings. On social media, police issued warnings. Young women must stay vigilant. Marriage shouldn't hinge on sweet words or distant promises. Verify identities. It's the bare minimum to protect your life. Today, Moan, now in his 60s, rots in a Karnataka prison. 4. The victims' families, it's their only solace. Death penalty or life sentence. It hardly matters now. What matters is this monster who used marriage to kill dozens will never walk free again. Yet, in Moan's eyes, those innocent women's deaths were mere fleeting sorrows. His own words. Each time a woman died, I felt sad, but it lasted 15 to 20 days. Then another woman came along and I forgot the past. Reflect on this case. A true monster doesn't always wield a weapon or lurk in shadows. He might approach with flowers and a smile, offering a wedding dress and a ring, whispering, "I'll marry you. I'll take care of you," before sending you to your grave. Story 6. Samara 2025. A shocking and disturbing crime rattled the city, becoming one of the most sensational cases in recent history. A former mayor, a powerful political figure, and his wife mysteriously vanished. Their disappearance set off a wave of concern among those close to them, triggering an extensive search. But soon, investigators uncovered a grim reality. The prime suspect, their own granddaughter. Security cameras recorded her handling a barrel. Traces of chemical substances were found in the apartment, and the victim's financial assets suddenly appeared in questionable transactions. Every clue pointed to a carefully orchestrated act. But what could have driven her to such an extreme? Financial struggles, mounting debt, or something far darker? Why has she remained silent since being taken into custody? And was she really acting alone? Samara is a city with a deep history and a strategically significant location along the Vila River in Russia. It is a major industrial hub where business is tightly interwoven with politics and exclusive elite circles. During the 1990s, a unique balance formed between government power, big business, and underground networks. The local elite wielded influence far beyond the region, and their wealth was often built on oil revenues, covert deals, and behind-the-scenes political maneuvers. One of the key figures in Samara's elite was Viktor Tarov. His name was known to everyone from government officials to influential underworld figures. He wasn't just the head of the city, he controlled a significant part of its economy. Born in Kuyabyshev, Tarov climbed the ranks from Soviet-era chemical engineer to successful businessman, eventually becoming a high-ranking official and finally the mayor of Samara. This position only increased his influence, but also earned him powerful enemies. The Tarov family wasn't just wealthy. It was a dynasty accustomed to power and luxury. Viktor Tarov owned high-end real estate, vast land holdings, and a fleet of luxury cars, while his family enjoyed all the privileges that came with his status. But behind the facade of prosperity lurk serious issues. Ekaterinina Tarova, Viktor's granddaughter, was born in 1995 in Samara, growing up in an environment where wealth and influence were simply a way of life. Her mother, Ludmila Tarova, was raised as the heir to a powerful family, while her father, Sergei Lajanov, was known in certain circles under the nickname Lord. From an early age, Ludmila was drawn to questionable circles. Despite having access to the best education and the countless opportunities provided by her father, she chose a carefree and indulgent lifestyle. By the 1990s, she was fully immersed in the underground world, surrounded by figures from organized networks where she felt completely at ease. Her first husband, Konstantin Sherbikov, had ties to a well-known criminal group in Samara and lost his life in 2001. After his passing, Ludmila became involved with Sergei Lajanov, a man not only connected to underground operations, but also a key player in large-scale oil fraud schemes that brought in millions. In 2010, he was arrested for allegedly orchestrating an attack on a federal agent, which ultimately landed him behind bars. But Ludmila didn't stray far from his path. She developed strong ties with organized groups, participated in fraudulent schemes, and eventually found herself facing legal consequences as well. By the summer of 2021, Ludmila Tarova was at the center of a highly publicized legal case. She tried to extort a huge sum of money from Alexander Malv, a deputy of the regional parliament, threatening to publicize defamatory personal information. However, her plan quickly unraveled. Malv immediately contacted law enforcement. In December 2022, Tarova was arrested and shortly after the court found her guilty. She was sentenced to 7 years in a general regime correctional facility. Meanwhile, Ekaterina Tarova's teenage years were marked by complete freedom and an absence of supervision. As the granddaughter of a powerful political figure, she never faced financial struggles and had little understanding of the true value of money. Unlike her peers, she was never given spending limits, pressured to succeed academically, or expected to follow strict rules. This lack of boundaries created a sense of entitlement that only grew stronger with time. From a young age, Ekaterina embraced a life of luxury. She was drawn to high-end fashion brands, exclusive parties, and connections with influential people. During those years, Samara's nightlife scene thrived, and Tarova quickly found herself surrounded by the city's elite youth, the sons and daughters of wealthy families for whom lavish entertainment was a way of life. In this environment, alcohol and prohibited substances were commonplace. Ekaterina never concerned herself with the future. Her grandfather provided everything she needed, and her mother, preoccupied with her own criminal dealings, never interfered in her life. The real problems began when Ekaterina became heavily involved with illicit substances and her behavior started to shift. Over time, her dependency grew stronger and she found it increasingly difficult to function without regular access. Her social circle changed as well. She became surrounded by people willing to offer her anything she wanted in exchange for money, favors, or influence. Despite receiving generous financial support from her grandfather, her spending habits spiraled out of control, surpassing the allowances she was given. In 2016, when her reputation in Samara was already far from spotless, she met an Israeli citizen while in Cyprus. Their relationship developed rapidly, and before long, they were married. Ekaterinna took her husband's last name, becoming Bella. In 2017, they had a son. However, family life did not change her lifestyle. She continued to cause scandals, frequently drank, and struggled to control her emotions. Her husband could no longer tolerate it, and after 2 years, he filed for divorce. After the separation, Ekaterinna returned to Samara, leaving her son in the care of his grandparents. Once again, her family fully supported her. Her grandfather, Viktor Tarov, continued to provide financial assistance despite her behavior. However, even that was not enough for her. The Ekaterinas spent massive amounts on entertainment and prohibited substances. But for the first time, she began to experience financial difficulties as the flow of money slowed down. By 2020, her situation had become critical. She attempted to go through rehabilitation, but soon relapsed, returning to her previous lifestyle. Her behavior became even more erratic. She still had the same expensive habits, but now she lacked the money to support them. In desperation, she started selling her belongings. Designer handbags, jewelry, phones, and even religious icons gifted by her grandparents. Family heirlooms meant nothing to her. At that moment, cash was her only priority. Over time, Ekaterinna began borrowing money from acquaintances, but people quickly lost trust in her. Her debts grew and creditors became more persistent in demanding repayment. She found herself in a dead end. She had no legal income and no interest in getting a job. Realizing that his granddaughter had no intention of changing, Viktor Tarov started cutting back on her financial support. To Ekaterina, this was a betrayal rather than an attempt to help. She was convinced that he was obligated to continue providing for her family. Tensions escalated and arguments turned into open hostility. Ekaterina no longer hid her resentment, openly blaming her grandparents for all of her problems. Over time, her anger only intensified. At some point, she came to a chilling realization. The only way to solve her financial problems for good was to remove the people standing between her and her inheritance. By 2023, the Ekaterina's financial situation had deteriorated dramatically. Her debts were mounting. She had borrowed from various sources, some from acquaintances, some from high-interest loan companies, and the rest from individuals who were not known for their patience when it came to repayment. She promised several lenders that she would settle her debts soon, but in reality, she had no way of making the payments. The pressure from creditors mounted, and the calls and threats became more intense. At this point, Ekaterina began attempting to sell her family's assets. Desperate for money, she started looking for buyers for valuable possessions that belonged to her relatives. Her focus shifted to antique religious icons, jewelry, and even her grandmother's car. According to the investigation, she successfully sold some of these items. But even that wasn't enough. That's when Ekaterina began considering selling real estate registered under Viktor Tarov's name. However, her grandfather, an experienced and cautious man, maintained strict control over his assets and would never allow her to handle his property without his approval. She realized that as long as he was alive, she would never have full access to his wealth. In early January 2025, Viktor and Natalia Tarov suddenly stopped responding to calls. Relatives, friends, and business associates attempted to reach them, but their phones remained off. Their disappearance quickly raised concerns. These were not the kind of people who would suddenly go off the grid, especially Viktor Tarov, who was always in contact, even with former colleagues and business partners. When he failed to respond to birthday greetings on January 3, 2025, it immediately alarmed those close to him. The first to raise the alarm was Tarov's former deputy. After repeatedly trying to call Viktor with no success, he received a strange message. All questions to Kadaya. This seemed highly suspicious. Tarov was known for his proper grammar and punctuation, but the writing style in this message was completely different. Attempts to reach the couple continued, but to no avail. Concerned, Tarov's assistant finally filed a missing persons report with the authorities. Once the report was filed, the police launched an investigation. Immediately, detectives first checked the Tarov's residence, reviewed their latest financial transactions, and analyzed surveillance footage. Soon, disturbing details began to emerge, pointing to Ekaterina Tarova's unusual behavior. Suspicions deepened after investigators examined her financial activity. In the days leading up to her relative's disappearance, she had made questionable purchases and then attempted to cover up any evidence of their presence in the apartment. When the investigative team arrived at the Tarov's home, they were met with an unsettling scene. Although there were no obvious signs of a struggle, the residence appeared suspiciously clean. Forensic specialists detected traces of chemical agents commonly used to eliminate biological evidence. During a thorough inspection of the apartment, forensic specialists used advanced equipment to detect hidden traces not visible to the naked eye. In the bathroom and kitchen, they discovered biological residue, which after laboratory analysis was confirmed to contain blood. DNA testing identified the traces as belonging to Viktor and Natalia Tarov. The small amount of blood suggested to investigators that the cause of death did not involve significant blood loss. Investigators were also drawn to purchases Ekaterina had made in the weeks leading up to her relative disappearance. According to transaction records, she had ordered plastic containers, chemical substances, heavy-duty bags, and protective suits online. These purchases stood out as suspicious as they had no clear household purpose. Additionally, her financial situation at the time was unstable and these large expenses were inconsistent with her usual spending habits. Further analysis of her recent actions revealed that Ekaterina had also started rapidly liquidating her grandparents' belongings. Within a short period, she listed several valuable possessions for sale, including antique religious icons, jewelry, and a Toyota RAV4 that had belonged to Natalia Tarova. The quick sale of such expensive items raised red flags for investigators, as there was no evidence that the rightful owners had willingly transferred control of their property to her. At the same time, law enforcement obtained detailed records of Viktor and Natalia's phone calls and messages. Analysis showed that their mobile phones remained active even after their presumed disappearance. Messages were sent from their numbers to friends and family, claiming the couple had left town. However, a linguistic examination of these texts revealed inconsistencies in writing style and phrasing, leading investigators to suspect that someone else had been using their devices. Another red flag was Ekaterina's access to her grandfather's phone to log into his online banking account. Investigators discovered that after Viktor Tarov's disappearance, there had been multiple attempts to carry out financial transactions from his accounts. Although she was unable to fully access the funds, the mere fact that she tried to use his finances while his whereabouts remained unknown became a key piece of evidence. Once enough evidence had been gathered, authorities moved to detain Ekaterina Tarova. The operation was carried out at her grandfather's apartment where she had continued to live even after his disappearance. During her arrest, Ekaterina remained surprisingly calm. She did not resist, express outrage, or even ask why she was being detained. There were no visible signs of distress or anxiety, which seemed unusual for someone suspected of a serious crime. After being taken to the police station, she was interrogated. During the initial questioning, the Ekaterina refused to provide testimony, claiming she was feeling unwell. Investigators continued their work and presented her with the evidence they had gathered. However, instead of offering clear explanations, she began changing her version of events. Her statements contradicted each other and her reasoning did not hold up under scrutiny. As the investigation progressed, additional evidence was uncovered, helping to piece together a possible timeline of the crime. Detectives analyzed surveillance footage, witness statements, and digital traces left on her phone and computer. These findings provided a clearer picture of what had transpired. The Ekaterina's primary defense strategy was complete denial of involvement. She insisted that she knew nothing about her relatives' whereabouts and claimed she had sold their belongings at their request. However, the evidence painted a different picture. Investigators continued reconstructing the chain of events, uncovering more proof that pointed to her involvement. Crime timeline. Possible theories. The exact sequence of events remains unclear, but investigators have considered several possible scenarios. Poisoning. One theory suggests that Ekaterina may have planned the crime in advance by adding a toxic substance to her relatives' food or drinks. This would explain the lack of struggle and the minimal blood traces in the apartment. However, forensic analysis has yet to find conclusive proof of poisoning. Blunt force trauma. Another possibility is that the victims were attacked quickly, possibly with strikes to the head. The absence of significant blood at the scene suggests that the crime may have been carried out in this manner. A rapid and forceful attack could have resulted in immediate fatal injuries, after which the perpetrator may have taken steps to dispose of the remains. Strangulation. This scenario is considered one of the most likely. If the perpetrator wanted to avoid making noise, this method would have been a logical choice. However, investigators have not yet presented sufficient evidence to confirm this theory. After the crime was committed, the Ekaterina needed to dispose of the remains, and investigators believe she resorted to extreme measures. Surveillance footage captured Ekaterina bringing a large blue plastic barrel into the apartment. Later, the same container was seen outside the building. Investigators suspect that it may have been used to transport the victim's remains. Additionally, chemical substances were found in the case, which may have been used to accelerate decomposition. Some media outlets reported that human remains were allegedly discovered in the apartment's refrigerator, but no official confirmation of this claim has been provided. However, forensic experts did detect microscopic traces of blood throughout the apartment despite apparent attempts to clean the space thoroughly. As the investigation progressed, each new piece of evidence further reinforced the theory that Ekaterina Tarova was directly involved in the disappearance and likely the deaths of her relatives. A curious detail emerged. Shortly before this, Katerina had claimed she had broken her leg and was using crutches to get around. However, on the day she was seen carrying bags in the barrel, the crutches had mysteriously disappeared and she appeared to be walking normally. Additionally, neighbors reported seeing an unidentified man near her during this time, someone who may have assisted her in moving the container. His identity remains unknown, and authorities are still working to verify his involvement. Investigators suspect that Ekaterina disposed of the remains and parts, discarding them in dumpsters across different areas of Samara. The waste from these locations was later transported to the Priobzanka landfill. Law enforcement officers initiated a search at the landfill. However, too much time had passed and the sheer volume of waste measured in dozens of tons made the search nearly impossible. Another theory suggests that some remains may have been destroyed using chemical agents or other means, though no direct evidence has been found to confirm this. Once the investigation was completed and all evidence was gathered, prosecutors officially charged Katerina Tarova. She was accused of committing a double homicide with the intent of seizing her relatives' assets, as well as desecrating the remains. The trial sparked widespread public interest, not only because the suspect was the granddaughter of a former mayor, but also due to the particularly brutal nature of the crime. After Ekaterina Tarova was arrested for the crime involving her grandparents, investigators explored the possibility of her mother's involvement. The question was logical. Could Ludmilla, even while serving her sentence, have influenced her daughter or had a motive for their deaths? However, no direct evidence linking her to the crime was found. At the time of the incident, she had already been in prison for several years and had no physical ability to orchestrate it. Nevertheless, her role in shaping Ekaterina's mindset was undeniable. From an early age, Ludmilla demonstrated that power and money could be obtained through deception, manipulation, and crime. The Katerina absorbed this worldview, which ultimately led her to commit an unthinkable act. Prosecutors sought a life sentence for Ekaterina, arguing that the crime was committed with financial intent and extreme cruelty. One of the lingering questions during the trial was whether she had an accomplice. Investigators considered the possibility that Ekaterina could not have carried out such a complex act alone. The main person of interest was a man named Vitaly, an inmate she had met while visiting her mother in prison. Authorities discovered that Ekaterina had maintained close contact with him. Phone records showed that she frequently called him before the crime and had also transferred money to his account. However, there was no direct evidence linking him to the crime. While the court considered the possibility that he may have acted as a coordinator, there was not enough proof to charge him at the time of sentencing. Ekaterina Tarova's case became one of the most sensational criminal stories in recent years. Public opinion was divided. Some saw her as a cold-blooded criminal who committed the act for financial gain, while others speculated that she was being controlled by more powerful forces. However, most people agreed on one thing: the crime was inhumane and deserved the harshest punishment. As of now, court proceedings are still ongoing. and are being broadcast on national television. While journalists continue to reveal new details about Ekaterina's life, her struggles with prohibited substances, and her debts, the public was stunned that the granddaughter of such an influential figure could commit such an act against her own family for money. According to recent reports, Ekaterina Tarova has stopped speaking due to severe stress. During interrogations and court hearings, she has remained silent and appeared detached. One theory suggests that she may have developed mutism, a condition in which a person loses the ability to speak or respond to questions. Another possibility is a stupor-like state, a condition characterized by impaired consciousness while basic reflexes remain intact. In the coming days, Ekaterina is expected to undergo a psychiatric evaluation at the Samara Psychiatric Hospital to assess her mental state and rule out the possibility of feigned symptoms. The examination is expected to last at least 30 days. After the murder of Viktor and Natalia Tarov, the question of inheritance remained. According to preliminary data, the property of the former mayor was estimated at 145 million rubles. However, the Ekaterina was stripped of any inheritance rights. Under the law, individuals convicted of a crime against their benefactors are legally barred from claiming their assets. This left one potential heir, Ekaterina's young son, who was placed under the care of social services after her arrest. His father, an Israeli citizen, learned about the situation through news reports. While the court considered granting custody to him, Russian authorities were in no hurry to finalize the decision. By court ruling, Viktor Tarov's estate was to be transferred to the next legal heir. Since Ekaterina was disqualified from claiming the inheritance, the matter remained unresolved. As of February 19, 2025, the trial of Ekaterina Tarova has not yet concluded and no verdict has been issued. She remains in custody until April 2, 2025. Authorities continue investigating the potential involvement of other individuals, including Vitaly Lukin, an inmate with whom Ekaterina had maintained contact. However, no direct evidence has been presented linking him to the crime. Ekaterina's attorney told reporters that his client continues to remain silent and has not commented on the charges against her. As the rain gently falls and the night grows deeper. Thank you for joining me here at Mr. Nightcared. True crime stories remind us of life's mysteries and the importance of staying aware even as we seek comfort in the quiet of the night. Let the rain carry you to a peaceful sleep. And until we meet again, stay safe, stay curious, and let the night watch over you.